Nobody Saves the World is developed by Drinkbox Studios, who is also the studio behind Gaucamelee and Severed. Just like Gaucamelee was a Metroidvania, and Severed had them showing how they could handle a first-person crawler, Nobody Saves the World seems to be their take on an action RPG. In Nobody Saves the World, you play as Nobody, who wakes up with no memory. He is quickly told to talk to the great wizard Nostramagus for help, but you soon realize Nostramagus is missing and Randy, a student of Nostramagus, is trying to find him. After Randy orders you to make him some coffee, you stumble on a powerful wand, which gives you the ability to change forms. It isn't long before you learn there is something known as the Calamity that is starting to affect the world, and it's up to you to collect 5 shards that, when combined, can help defeat it. As you progress through the game, you complete quests that give experience to your overall level of Nobody or the rank of the form you are currently using. The form quests usually involve you doing moves from that form's available abilities, while the other quests generally come from the world's NPCs or just events that you might trigger along the way. When a form ranks up, it gets access to even more passives and abilities. You get a lot of these quests in the game, and while you can track them while you're running around and fighting, you do have to go into the menu to complete a quest, and when you do that, you have to watch a small animation as it gives you the experience gained from it, and since you do this over and over and over through the game, it honestly starts to become a little much. When you first start playing the game feels pretty basic since you're limited to a few forms and their abilities. But the hook of the game is that eventually you will start mixing and matching forms with their abilities and passives. This is when the combat opens up a lot more and gives you the power to create a playstyle you like. Each form offers pretty unique abilities that are fun to experiment with. Want to destroy a ton of enemies as a slime while summoning rabbits, tigers, zombies, and evil minions? Well, this game might just be for you. Each form also has different damage types needed to break wards on enemies of the same type before you can do damage on them. So it benefits you to change out skills so you have the option to use each of the damage types while using a single form. There are also upgrade tokens you obtain through completing dungeons or just from random drops or chests that can be used to upgrade the abilities you unlock on the different forms. As I mentioned before, quests are the only way to gain experience. The shopkeeper, who is pretty much everywhere in the world and loves to comment on your forms, offers quests to buy that are infinitely repeatable. He also offers additional passives to use, attribute upgrades, and even some star charges if you're running short and you need to top off before entering the next main dungeon. The game is made up of a static overworld map that has dungeons littered across it. These dungeons are procedurally generated, so every time you go in, their paths change. There are 5 main dungeons that you need star points to access, which also locks down any quest progress of the form you are using while in it. Star points needed for these dungeons can be gained through various methods like completing quests and finishing the smaller dungeons. Each of the non-main dungeons usually have some unique attribute to them that affects you, the dungeon, or the monsters in it. Overall, though, they eventually all start feeling pretty much the same, fighting off tons of monsters with also a swarm of monsters as a boss at the end. It's probably one of the bigger faults I have in the game, since I had more fun running around the unique and well-drawn overworld and interacting with its inhabitants. The main dungeons were not much better. They typically involved having to find some keys to unlock a gate or defeat a certain amount of enemies to move forward, which if you have to defeat 60 enemies, then hit another gate needing another 60-ish, and then die during that, and then you have to do it all over again, and then die again along the way, it can get pretty frustrating quickly. I really like the look of the game. The overworld is filled with beautiful artwork as you make your way through it. The characters themselves can be hit or miss, but it really just comes down to if you like the style they're going for. The music itself served its purpose, but it really had no tracks that stood out to me. Overall, it took me about 15 hours to beat Nobody Saves the World, and for a game of this nature, it felt about right. Being a big fan of Gaucamelee and Severed, I had pretty high hopes going into Nobody Saves the World, but I did leave feeling a little disappointed overall. It has a slow start, a pretty fun run through the middle, but then starts to fizzle out towards the end. The story is pretty much backloaded on the game, so outside of a few nuggets they drop along the way, nothing is really spelled out to you until you're about to face down the end boss. I personally give Nobody Saves the World a 7 out of 10. It's just a good overall game. You can generally find it pretty cheap on sales now also, so if you're in the mood to fight lots of enemies and play around with the different form possibilities it offers, I would say give it a shot.